A man walks into POP Fishing and Marine and he stands, staring and still. After a few minutes, the heavy perfection of machined metal speaks to him, and he reaches out his hand to a shiny chrome jethead trolling lure. This man owns no boat, he owns no fishing rod, no reel, but he picks up the chrome jethead fishing lure and carries it to the register, where he stands proudly. The woman at the register knows this man does not fish, but she smiles. She comes out from behind the counter, and she leads him across the store to the display of big green egg cookers. He reaches out his hand and he lays it on the finely engineered top of an extra-large-sized big green egg. Suddenly his face gains back the faraway look of a man who has been called by something powerful, and he turns to the woman from the sales desk and he says, "I have an enormous backyard. POP Fishing and Marine. You want stuff that works? We got it. On Pier 38, next to Nico's."
You're listening to Go Fish with Mike Buck on AM 690, The Fishing Answer. This segment is being brought to you by the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council at wpcouncil.org. Now, troll on in.
Yeah, first thing off the bat, we want to welcome the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council as sponsors of the program again. They've just renewed for a year. We're very, very pleased, and this is the last time in 2016. But so we're gonna try to not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We're going to take a look at what some of the key things that have happened, and we're going to give you a couple of little inklings on some of the things that are coming up, including in a little bit you're going to learn about how maybe your child, your son or your daughter, can attend a very informative summer school program this summer and learn all about the marine science. It's something that's going to be terrific. But first, we want to welcome to the program. He is a program officer for the council, Mark Mitsuyasu. Mitsuyama, good morning. Or good afternoon, depending on what day it is.
Yeah, how's it going, Mike?
Now, how did Mitsuyama get to the council?
Mitsuyasu.
Yeah.
How did I get there?
Yeah, how did you get there?
Roundabout way. When I was going to graduate school in the mainland, I did an internship at the council with Kitty, some of the other staff.
Yep.
Then I stayed up there, worked in the mainland for a while.
Yep.
Ended up moving back here to Oahu, working in industry.
Did you think when you came back, when you got to the council, which you tell me about, that it was going to be, okay, I'm stuck now, this is it, this is where I live?
No, not at the time. Not at the time. But, there's so much different things that go on, and it's always something to do. It's always something new. So it's like
I found that the council is truly an eclectic organization, that everybody came there for a different reason. Almost everybody was going to be maybe just one of the steps they took down the road, and many of you have become committed to see this thing through.
Yeah, and we've had some staff that's been with us for a long time now, and from all over the place too. So not only from Hawaii or the U.S., but we have some guys from we have somebody from Japan and the Philippines, and our friend Paul Dalzell, who you'll introduce in a second here. But I think that a lot of those people bring different skills to the table.
Yeah, I also think, Mark, that they bring passion. And I've noticed that in all my dealings with the council. That's why we're so pleased to have him once again. Dr. Paul Dalzell is the chief scientist for the council, and not a media maven. He kind of, it's like pulling teeth out of him to get him in the studio, but once he gets here, he's terrific. So, first of all, Doc, Happy New Year to you.
Oh, thanks a lot. Same to you, Mike.
You are the go-to guy in many respects, and as a senior scientist, I don't know if the listening public knows how many things go on at the council that rely on a real, honest, scientific look at something, investigation, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got the main program area. Just say, for example, kind of splits between pelagic fishes and then the inshore region. We've got a very skilled colleague from the Philippines originally, Malloy Sabater, who does some pretty good quantitative science on reef fish and bottom fish. My area is the pelagic fisheries. But then we've also got to sort of look at the social and economic impacts of management measures, and also of not things that we do, but the most recent thing, of course, the monument closure. How do you forecast the impact of that?
Yeah, I must tell you that I look at it as like a buffet dinner. because everybody goes up to the table to get something different. What I take to my plate and what Mark or you, Dr. Dalzell, or Aaron, or anybody for that matter, it's a matter of taking a study and taking from that study those part of the results that work in with what your agenda is. In other words, the science that you use is used by multiple layers of the council.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not just confined to one narrow discipline.
Yeah.
You have to be able to appreciate not only the strict biological sciences, but the social sciences.
On that word, and Mark, let's go to you for a minute on this. On that, this year, more attention got brought to these fishing monuments than ever before. In the very beginning, it looked like such a stellar idea. Back, we're talking maybe a decade and a half or 20 years ago, when this concept first got, this is our nursery, so we've got to preserve this forever. Science doesn't support that theory that much, but by the same token, what's happened recently, I know, has caused the council and many people that are in the fishing industry a lot of concern about that. Is that the first thing you hear about now? Oh, this monument, this expansion, this monument's going to kill us?
I think from the community standpoint, for people who are involved in the fisheries, they've seen a trend over the last 10, 15 years now of large marine area closures, whether it's in the form of a reserve, sanctuary, or these monuments. We've gone through, what is this, our fourth round of closures out here in the Pacific. We're now almost half of our jurisdiction in the Western Pacific region is now closed down because of
and folks, when you do the math, which we hope you're going to be able to do by listening to this segment, it's frightening. Now, I think it's ironic, Dr. Dalzell, that and this is a very interesting thing. As everybody knows, 2017 is the Waikiki area is closed once again for a year. And after a year, this area is resilient. It comes back, it's starting to look pretty good, and then the floodgates open, and one day after the year, it's decimated again. This is somewhat, some of us inshore guys getting used to. This is going to be closed for a year. It obviously works, but obviously, there's some people who would have you believe that the same thing is happening offshore in the hundreds of thousands of miles there are of decimated stocks. Your studies and your science doesn't support that.
No, you're comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly.
You're comparing species which have high site fidelity to actual solid substrate, off Waikiki. It's a very limited area. Yeah, the day it opens, everybody goes out there and catches all the biomass.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not unusual. The same thing happened in Australia with coral trout closures. They'd open up the area to fishing, just recreational fishing, and most of the biomass gets taken in the first few days. These much larger areas, you can't access them. And to go to Waikiki, you drive down there and you're 4-wheel driving with your fishing pole.
Yeah.
But to get to these big areas in the Pacific, you need a big boat
and lots of fuel,
lots of ice, lots of food.
Sure.
It's just the two things can't be compared.
Well, but the concept. Now here's where I think the problem is. When you take a look at Waikiki, there are very few residents in Waikiki that fish in Waikiki. Okay, I mean there are a few, but most people can't afford to live in Waikiki anyway. Those that do are a little longer in the tooth and probably not skilled fisher people. So what happens is people get bussed in from all other communities. And some of the community-based management that you've looked at the council lately makes a lot of sense because when you rest an area or kapu an area, it only affects a small amount of people, and then the stock can come back up and you can start taking it again. It's not all gone in one day like it is in Waikiki.
Yeah, I mean, some of these community management approaches, I think on Molokai, Moomi, where they've taken it to the next level, which is beyond just putting kapus or closures in particular areas, but they've also looked at the species of fish and done their own biological observations, so that they can actually fine tune this kind of management.
Yeah, and Mark, in previous programs, we've shared microphones with Charlie Ka'ai as well, talking about this stuff where the input is from the kupuna in the area, from the residents of the area, from fisheries, from NOAA, and then even from the standpoint of, is it legal to prevent somebody to come here and do this thing? But it seems to be that there's some areas where Haena would be one. There's certainly Momomi Beach that Doc mentioned a while ago. There's some others that there's some pilot projects going on there that actually look like they're going to work because there's community amalgamated input. It's not just one person.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is that people are mobile, right? Like you said, with regards to Waikiki. Yeah. And then, so you have people living in the area who use the resource on a regular basis, understand the resource. Then when you have people come in who maybe don't understand the nuances of that particular area and runs and what's available and how much and all those kinds of things, it's an education process. Yeah. And so there's different ways about trying to limit participation in harvest. Closures is sure one way that people used to do it. And in a kapu system, I believe that they used to do this open close kind of thing.
There were consequences too,
right? And there was enforcement, definitely enforcement. But I think that in general, it's a lot of work to have those kinds of systems work. And the more isolated the community, I think probably the better chance it does have. So
if you come here from another place and get a driver's license, you are expected to know the rules of the road.
Right.
And that's why I like people, especially newbies that might be listening, to go to WPCouncil.org and take a look at the code of ethics, take a look at the responsibilities, take a look at sustainability. I think that sometimes, Paul Dalzell, that this come out in the paper, and I know you as a scientist must be very resentful of the fact sometimes they don't really look at the length and breadth of what this council does as far as offering alternatives and information that help people make decisions. They think that all the council wants to do is represent commercial longline boats that want to take fish out of the water.
Yeah, and that's only part of what we do.
Yeah.
We also are responsible for any fishing in the federal waters. That includes bottom fish, and in some cases reef fish. But we also have very strong cultural programs for indigenous people in the Pacific. You have American Samoans, the Chamorros and Marianas, Native Hawaiians here in Hawaii. Sure. We also have very strong programs for looking at ecosystem approaches to fishing, especially mitigation of interactions with what I would call charismatic megafauna, the big cuddly stuff, turtles
and things, right?
Whales, even sharks, and seabirds, of course.
Yeah. Well, we get into a point where, depending on what somebody's interest is, a tremendous amount of effort goes into stopping everything because of one bird or one fish or one turtle that might be impacted. As a scientist, I know it must be very difficult for people to understand this, but the world changes. Some species change, some species go away. And I'm not sure there's anything other than anecdotal evidence to suggest that man has much to do with the change, unless you talk about sort of just overfishing, say, sharks to sell their fins or something like that.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things is how fast species recover if you just get that. You hit them at the right choke point. A good example is turtles and nesting beaches. We've seen phenomenal recovery of loggerhead turtles in Japan. The olive ridley in Central America. They have these huge arabadas, these mass spawning events, and actually they're so big that people come and collect the first sort of clutches of eggs.
Yeah, because they're there.
Because they're going to get dug up again by more turtles coming in.
Sure.
But then on the other hand, too, you wonder why, like a leatherbacks have done really well in the Atlantic, but extremely poorly in the Pacific. And it's not, you can't say, it's entirely due to human intervention. There are, I think, other things going on. And right now we're in the middle of a period of rapid climate fluctuation. Climate change is...
I saw something. As a scientist, you love this. This was... No matter what precautions we take on the globe, whether it's in China where there's black smoke billowing up in the air 24 hours a day, there's one underwater volcano that does more contamination in all by itself than all of the other sources combined.
Yeah, I mean, one volcano like Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines can cause a cooling effect on the Earth.
Yeah,
you know, and also spews out vast amounts of sulfur dioxide. But you know, we seem to be in a warming phase. There definitely are changes in the patterns of distribution of fish. What I find concerning is that as you close off more U.S. waters, you offer less options for the U.S. fishermen to respond to this. And let's not forget that the United Nations would very much like to tie up all the high seas areas. So, I mean, it would be absolute chaos and anarchy if every longline fishing vessel had to fish in the immediate waters around the Hawaiian archipelago.
Yeah, if you want to find out where there are no fish, that wouldn't take long. I think what's interesting, though, Mark, we talked earlier about some of the things that have really impacted, I don't want to say the image, but the persona put forward by the council. I think the council has been wonderful in trying to get to the administration with some of the realities of what some of these closures would do. I was most disappointed, as was my audience a couple of weeks back, when yet another letter went to the council from Ed Ebisui and Kitty Simons from the council saying, hey, look, here's the way things are, and here's the way you need to take a look at this. We can kill two birds with one stone. In other words, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can have a preserve, but we also have selected fishing. I know that this has got to go around the council like wildfire, and you're involved in so many of these programs. What is it like when not only does a letter apparently not get paid attention to, but not even answered?
Well, it's disappointing.
Yeah, I should say.
It's really disappointing from the administration. They should at least acknowledge and recognize all the information that's out there. And, you know, so Paul's talking about how things fluctuate and change and whatnot. And, you know, nothing is static. And the way that we set up our structure, and actually the way Congress set up the council system, is to adapt and change. You know, we make changes through these plans, which we amend all the time. Yeah. And so we're in the process right now, because of what the administration did, is going back in now and amending our pelagic and Hawaii fishery ecosystem plans to comply with what the president had done. And so this is the process. We just finished a round of public meetings throughout the state, specifically on this issue. And we had decent attendance in some areas and light attendance in others.
I'm going to tell you right now that through this program, we're going to make people put cheeks in the seats on the meetings that are coming up in 2017. And I think the reason why, we'll go back to Dr. Dalzell, is that I think that there should be somebody in every administration that says, okay, the president's not going to read this, but let's get an expert to read it and then give the president or whoever the administration is ideas of what changes can be made to make it more equitable. Because what was said just days ago in the press going up towards the New Year's celebration, which we're celebrating today as we speak, is that the price of ahi was not affected this Christmas like it was last. It's about the same, a little less than it was last year, for a number of reasons which you can explain. But it does give you a harbinger of things to come. If these changes to this monument aren't addressed, we have a serious economic impact to the fishery, and that means to the consumer.
Well, I mean, the immediate impact was somewhere around in the region of about 10%. You know, not every vessel goes fishing in the Northwest. But you know that was a fairly crude analysis. What we should have done is looked at it and said, well, which vessels go up there, and what percent of their trips do they make in that area?
In other words, what of that mass could they be taking possibly out?
Well, but also, we sort of said, it affects say 10% of the fleet. Doesn't sound so very big. But what if the boats that went up there go up there 50% of the time or 60% of the time? Then there's been a much bigger impact to a segment of the fleet.
Even though it's only 12 boats, they're impacted heavily.
Yeah, and that's when you start to really sort of, drill down into these issues. But yeah, it's
I guess to the point. Maybe without putting words in your mouth, I'm disappointed because I think that enough science was presented. In a very organized, non-emotional manner, saying, hey, look, now that this is happening, here's how it's going to impact this place. Is there any wiggle room? What can we do?
Well, I mean, one of the problems, too, is you've got to look at who's advising the president on science issues. Mm-hmm. And for want of not wanting to be cited in a court of law for libel, you can look that up yourself and then look up who that guy studied under. Which I think is fair to say is Paul Ehrlich, the population bomb, and how much of that has not come true. Yeah,
what it really boils down to is where's the science?
Yeah,
and I'm not saying, Mark, that the science is 100% in our favor to throw caution to the wind, but I mean, if we take a look at the people can relate to this, especially fishermen, inshore guys. Although we're talking about pelagics right now, look at the phenomenal increase in the population of green sea turtles around the main islands.
Right.
I mean, it's to a point where in the 1970s we used to eat these things on a regular basis and not impact the fish, the stock at all. And now they are growing heaps and bounds, right? Yeah. So what Dr. Dalzell was saying, you can go to an area, make relatively small changes, and the impact is immediately felt by a recovery. But then what happens when the recovery starts overbalancing, and then all of a sudden you got too many turtles, and they're eating stuff that other stuff needs?
Well, and that's the management part.
Exactly.
And that's the adaptability part, where you need to be able to make changes. But in a lot of the cases with regards to the warm and fuzzy animals that Paul talked about, they don't want to make any changes, or you don't see any changes. And the other thing I wanted to mention, too, when Paul was talking about the impacts, looking at the impact from just this closure on the fishery, sure, you have some numbers. We got some statistics from who fishes where and what. But what you got to do is look 2 years prior, back to 2014, when the longline fishery already went through another closure to the Prias, the remote areas. That's like saying, hey, Mike, you know what? This year you're only going to take an 8% hit on your income, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, only 8.
Yeah, only 8. But 2 years ago you took a 6% hit on your income before that. So it's accumulating, and you got to look at the larger picture.
I think it is also, if we just talk about this in general terms as dismayed. There was once again somebody coming in grabbing headlines, Dr. Dalzell, about slavery and about piracy and about all of these things on the high seas. Sure, there's some boats that maybe not operating 100% the way they should be, but in actual fact, how does an owner of a longline boat go home and explain to his children that he's being lambasted in the press for something that isn't true?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, there is a genuine problem in Southeast Asia. There's no argument about that. Unfortunately, I think that the few issues that have been brought to light in Hawaii have been conflated to say that this is the same thing is happening here. In fact, there's not been a single issue, a single complaint, complaint to the Department of Homeland Security about any of the accusations that have been leveled at this fishery. And the migrant workers which work in this fishery are brought in a legal and above board. It is something that is monitored by Homeland Security and is, as I say, it's a legal corridor for or opportunity for work. Some of these people working in the fishery want their children to grow up and come and work in the fishery too.
Absolutely.
And it's not just the Hawaii longline fishery that makes use of this mechanism in the law. There are other industries such as tourism.
Sure. I had the opportunity the other day to talk to a guy on the air that was from the Philippines and fishing on a longline boat. And the money that he's made, he has a farm in the Philippines. He has a couple of taxis that operate in Manila. This guy is not only being protective of his job, but he wants his son to get it. So I think that and once again, Mark, if you take a look at somebody that's looking for a byline to get another writing prize, this woman that wrote this scathing set of articles, she probably was entitled to the recognition she got in another place. But she said, "Oh, here's another example of this. We'll just make this fit my mold instead of the reality."
Yeah, and it's just disappointing. That they can make those kinds of leaps without thoroughly looking at all the details, and then just from that one issue and that one comment or one statement or article, there's all of this stuff that just explodes, and then it takes a mountain of energy to try and educate everyone about the facts.
One of my friends, who's a skipper and an owner of a longline boat, said that his daughter asked him, Daddy, is our crew slaves? I mean, this is how bad it is now. Now, and that brings us to an interesting point, because a while ago we mentioned also sitting in the studio being a very good. He's a teacher that likes to teach, so it's obviously pretty hard for a teacher to shut up for a little while. But Aaron Yoshioka's here from Moanalua School, and I want to make mention, first of all, Aaron, Happy New Year. Nice to see you again.
Happy New Year, Mike.
And secondly, you know, what you've been doing for a long time very quietly because of your passion has really made an impact. And I know that some of the people that might be attending your summer school program this summer are bringing in a set of ideas that they're getting out of the press. And I think that you'd be a good person to bounce that off of. What do these kids expect? Are they going to ask you, teacher, do we have slaves in Hawaii?
Well, I think that's a very good point, Mike. You know, just some background, but I'm just your average Joe Blow citizen of Hawaii. And being a passionate fisherman with my friends, you know, from a young age, I really didn't know what the Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council was about. And I've been lucky enough to work with Mark, you know, over the years, and I learn something new every day. And I think if I'm a fisherman who thought they knew a lot, and I realize now that I really don't know a lot, I think there's a lot of people out there that probably need to get educated as well.
You know, and the best way to do that is go to wpcouncil.org, because you're going to see a lot of stuff, including this opportunity. This is a marine science course that Aaron's done now for, what is this, like the 4th or 5th year?
No, it's like it's about, I think this will be a 10th year.
10th year. See how time flies when you're having fun. I remember talking about this in the very beginning, but it's a myriad of stuff. And I know that we don't even have the course dates yet, but we'll be able to bring them to you. But you get to really see a mind's eye view of it. And I think what's interesting is there's no saying that you have to turn it into a job in the fishery. But how many of your kids have come back as what they learned from you guys and said, hey, I want a piece of this. I want to be part of this industry. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good point again. So we take about maybe 15 to 20 students every summer. And we've had many that have shown a big interest in the fisheries and just the marine resources of Hawaii. We got a student right now who's interning at Westpac, and I got another student who was a student last year who's kind of interested now again. So we are having some people. We had a student before who was lucky enough to, I think she's part of the Hokulea sailing crew and stuff now.
It's so exciting.
But we get a lot of, diverse students, and there are many students who, even if they don't pursue the field, I think it's just a good experience where now they have learned a lot and they pass it on to just friends and family, and
I think
when misinformation comes out, they can correct them.
When we first started talking about it, Aaron, the biggest kick I got was that when mom or dad puts a piece of fish on the plate for you, when you find out what had to happen to get that piece of mai on your plate, a renewed appreciation for fishing comes up, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
It's not just a sport.
Like I said, I was, I mean, not to be mean, but, I tell my students all the time that, I can't as a teacher help stupid, but I can help ignorance.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference.
Therein lies the big difference, right? Yeah. Like the definition of insanity. But I think that, once again, Mark, because of the hat that you wear as a program officer, that things like this are what make the future bright. And that's why I'm saying I want to go back to the people who don't understand the bottoms-up concept of the council, because you're doing the work of hundreds, and it's only because of the passion and because of the learning that people have done.
Yeah, and I mean, this year is our 40th anniversary for the Magnuson Stevens Act. So
and they said it never lasts.
And it's such a unique system, and I think that's why a lot of people have, I guess, a lot of uncertainty and unclarity about what we actually do, and that's why you mentioned earlier about us representing the industry. Well, we. Being under the Magnuson-Stevenson Act, we have two primary drivers. One is to sustain the resource. And there's 10 national standards for every action that we do that we have to measure it against, which includes the health of the stock, impacts to communities, safety at sea, a whole bunch of things like that. And the other thing is we need to comply with all the other authorities, Endangered Species Act, Marine Mammal Protection Act,
EPA,
yada yada yada, right?
OSHA, everybody,
right? So
anything with a letter on it.
So we need to make sure the resources are healthy and good. And on the other side, we have the mandate to provide opportunities. And so that's the development side. That's the supporting the community, the industry, if there's an opportunity for them to take.
And by the way, gang, if you want to take a look at this, when you go to the WPCouncil.org site, you can see the About Us, and you can see the construction of this group. People don't understand. Is it a branch of government? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a for-profit? Is it a scientific arm of the fishing community? It's all those things.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing about it.
Yeah, Congress created the councils. They created 8.
8 of them.
And we have
the biggest landmass.
We're outside of the administration, so we're not formally part of the Department of Commerce. We're tied to the Department of Commerce because the National Marine Fisheries Service and NOAA is there. But I think, we're actually called what they call an instrumentality, so it's kind of weird. And so,
Federal instrumentality.
yeah, exactly. So the council develops fishery policies and makes recommendations to the Secretary of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
That is its role. It takes all the information and all the science that it can get from the National Marine Fisheries Service, the Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center, University of Hawaii, wherever, international organization, a whole bunch of sciences all over. We take that, kind of weed through all of that and see how the council can make the best decision it can with regards to the resource and the community.
Yeah, and that's why, once again, senior scientist Dr. Paul Dalzell, when you prepare a study or statistics or a synopsis, it goes to a lot of people, a lot of hungry birds in the nest. And each one of them needs to extract something different in order to make their decisions. That's got to be exciting, that that you're handing people valuable science.
Yeah, it's also daunting because some of these people can be very critical.
Yeah.
But that's that's the whole basis of science. I mean, scientists should always be skeptical.
But don't you notice that when you look at a group, when you talk about, say, an advisory council or advisory committee, you're looking at not just a fisherman. You're looking at a tree hugger, at a conservationist, as a fish merchandiser, as a fisherman and scientist, all trying to look at the same issue.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of the council, is that it's like a spectrum across the whole of the community, and we rely very much on our advisors to provide us with what issues are concerning them, and can we help out? Can we develop policy that will maybe help alleviate some of these problems? Then we have our scientific committee, which is top notch with some pretty
We've had a lot of them on the air. They're fantastic people,
world class scientists who are ready to provide scientific advice, which to the council.
By the way, a lot of these people they make their bones somewhere else on the East Coast and the Pacific. Like you mentioned Malloy Sabater and Molly Deskovich and all of these different people.
Yeah,
that bring in all of this stuff, and we are so fortunate to have them light here and do their thing here too.
Absolutely. I mean, just to name a couple, there's Kurt Schaefer from the American Inter-American Tropical Tuna Commission. We have Graham Pilling from Secretariat of the Pacific Community. Ray Hilborn, University of Washington. Yeah. Ray's sort of...
he's a mythbuster, man. I love him.
He is, yeah. He's fantastic.
No nonsense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, I think, once again, I want to go back to Aaron, because we're going to talk more in the next month or so on how your child can get involved in this. And I think that what I like is, I said, hungry birds in a nest. Dr. Dalzell has to prepare all of this science for these people. And you have to prepare an arena in which people can learn stuff. What would you say would be the main thing that drives a kid to want to be part of what you do?
Well, I'm kind of jumping out of my seat here because listening to everything that was said earlier, it's funny, but I think students, young people, are so impressionable, and from the media and a lot of these things, they get ideas in their head that is kind of scary sometimes. And through our class, I think they really get to have this unique opportunity to learn things in a very close, hands-on manner. So we're lucky where, I'm lucky where I don't hardly even teach. I mean, I just kind of facilitate, but we have, obviously.
I think what you do is the most exciting show and tell in Hawaii. Because you guys see everything. You're on the road, you're in the classroom, you're on a boat, you're at the auction, you're everywhere you need to be.
So we're everywhere. I mean, we're lucky enough to, have obviously all of the scientists, Mark, Paul from Westpac, and we have community people, we have professors, we have, the people at the fish auction, we get on the long line boats. I mean, we go to the Hawaiian fish ponds. I mean, we're everywhere, and I think the main thing, again, is that the students get to see things firsthand. So, like a couple of things that I was laughing at when you were talking earlier, just about education. But so the first thing that we talked about this year when we started the class was the monument was big. And almost all the kids said, we should close the Northwest Islands. And,
completely.
Yeah. And then after the class, I think I only had maybe one person who was kind of wavering, and everybody else was like, that's stupid.
See, not everybody is leaning to the left so far they can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, and the main reason, again, is because it wasn't anything I said, but it's just when you learn. So, I mean, we talked about the Magnuson-Stevens Act and the 200-mile EEZ. And the students are not dumb. They're smart enough to say, isn't it ironic, Mr. Yoshoka, that the EEZ was created to protect the fishing rights of Americans, and then it's like a bait and switch where later on you take away the fishing area for those Americans. And so, things like that. I mean, things like about the long line industry. We went on a long line boat, and it's very touching to me when I was talking to a Filipino fisherman, and I asked him, I said, do you want your two sons to be a fisherman? And he looked at me straight in the eye and he said, are you kidding? I make good money to send back home. So my wife sends my kids to the best private school in the Philippines. And my kid's going to be a doctor and a lawyer.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I see that reverberating throughout the industry. And that's why I must tell you, before we run out of time, which we're going to do here in any minute, is that the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council is an invaluable resource for all that we're talking about. You go to WPCouncil.org and you'll click on a myriad of things. I can't believe, Dr. Dalzell, the number of publications made available, the number of teachers that find their way to the council, and the good that the council is being able to do is to not necessarily sway somebody's opinion, but certainly open somebody's eyes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've just recently had quite a spate of publications. Myself and Malloy Sabater put out the proceedings of a national SSC meeting this year. And then there's the monograph series, which we have spread out for us here in the front, which have been done by council staff.
Yep.
And cover issues as diverse as fisheries development, reef fisheries, fishing vessels and fishery profiles, indigenous communities, and protected species conservation.
Yeah, I mean, the list is, first of all, it's a myriad of stuff. And second of all, you would be surprised at what an up-ramp there is. I felt the same thing, Mark, visiting the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. There's so many things that are misunderstood about OHA. And I know that there's interaction between OHA and the council right now with regards to some of the cultural practices and other things going on in the monument.
Yes.
But if people want to dig, I mean, one of the best places to dig is at WPCouncil.org and find out what we're talking about.
Yeah, there's an extensive library on there.
Yeah, I need you to, I need you all to make sure you're going to do this. Now, and I want to guess maybe the biggest single incident in 2016, which kind of rocked our boat, was the forwardness of the Obama administration to go on with this legacy monument without thinking of some of the ramifications. Is this going to be something the council wants to get to the new administration to say, look, here's what we think has happened as a result of disclosure. Can somebody come and take a look at this? And will somebody please answer a letter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the nicest thing is to get, instead of just sending these letters into a black hole and getting no response, is for someone to say, look, there's something that maybe we need to take a look at here. Yeah,
and I certainly hope that that's the case. Next week, we're going to be able to hopefully talk with Kitty Simons, Executive Director, on the direction the council is taking in 2017. We want to thank very much Aaron Yoshioka.
Can I just jump in real fast?
Real quick.
If anybody's interested, you can get on board. This year, I'm not sure the exact dates, but we'll probably start in early June and run maybe to the first week of July. So you can get in touch with me. I'm at Mauna High School. You can go on the Westpac website and click on their summer school. You can get information there, or you can give me a call. My number is 227-8493, or you can email me. My email is miki_yosh@yahoo.com.
Yeah, and I hope people do that. We'll give them plenty more opportunities to do that. Dr. Paul Dalzell, thanks for all you've done in the last year, helping me learn a little bit about what you do. We'll see you again pretty soon, I hope.
Okay.
And Mark, lots of programs. Right? We'll be seeing each other a lot this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back again.
Thanks, Mike.
Happy New Year to you all. May 2017 be better than 2016. And if you want to know more about this, what we're talking about today, go to WPCouncil.org. That's WPCouncil.org.